Hey, what's going on, family? It's me, baby girl Slaughter. I just want to jump on here real quick and do a short reading from the Smoky God. I think I talked about this book a while back, and I rotate and I read quite a bit. Um, we have about 3 books that we're currently reading from, but I just want to add something into this because everything ties in together, right? Let me move this out the way. Everything ties in together because the things that I bring to your attention pertain to Tartaria. They pertain to other planets, aliens, extraterrestrials, if you haven't, interterrestrials, interdimensional beings, ascension. Everything kind of ties in together, right? It's things that I find interesting that I like to discuss and read and learn more about. The Smoky God was about a gentleman who took a voyage to the inner worlds, and that would allude to more or less along the lines of the inner worlds, also the worlds beyond the ice walls, Antarctica. This earth is much bigger than what we've been taught, what we've been told. And when you start to go down the rabbit hole, you'll see that. So the way this book starts off is this gentleman met this guy. And so I'm just going to read to you a couple of the chapters, and I'm not going to make this long because I'm at lunch, so this is going to be a short read. So part 1 was pretty much the author's forward, and I'm just going to pick it right up where it says, I fear the seemingly incredible story which I'm about to relate will be regarded as the result of a distorted intellectual, superinduced possibility by the glamour of unveiling a mysterious mystery, rather than a truthful record of the unparalleled experiences related by one Olaf Jensen, okay, that's the gentleman's name who took the trip, whose eloquent madness so appealed to my imagination that all thought of my analytical criticisms have been effectually dispelled. Marco Polo will doubtless shift uneasily in his grave at the strange story I am called upon to chronicle, a story as strange as a Munchausen tale. It is also incongruous that I, a disbeliever, should be the one to edit the story of Olaf Jensen, whose name is now for the first time given to the world, yet who must hereafter rank as one of the notables on earth. I freely confess his statements admit of no rational analysis, but have to do with the profound mystery concerning the frozen north that for centuries has claimed the attention of scientists and laymen alike. Okay. However, much they are at variance with the cosmographical manuscripts of the past, these plain statements may be relied upon as a record of the things Olaf Jensen claims to have seen with his own eyes. This is another account that goes back to Admiral Byrd. And then there's another gentleman too, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, that also has chronicled journeys beyond the ice walls. I read that to you through Claudio's work. And I cannot think of the Admiral. There's been about five or six off the top of my head that I remember reading 6 individuals, including Claudio, that have gone beyond the ice walls and have had this account. Okay. So it says 100 times I've asked myself whether it is possible that the world's geography is incomplete. Well, we know it is. And that the startling narrative of Olaf Jensen is predicated upon demonstrable facts. The reader may be able to answer these queries to his own satisfaction. However, far the chronicle of this narrative may be from having reached a conviction. Yet sometimes even I am at a loss to know whether I have been laid away from an abstract truth by the ignis fatu of a clever superstition, or whether heretofore accepted facts are, after all, founded upon falsity. It may be that the true home of Apollo was not at Delphi, but in the older earth center of which Plato speaks, where he says Apollo's real home is among the Hyperboreans. We've heard that name countless times. In a land of perpetual life, where mythology tells us 2 doves flying from the 2 opposite ends of the world met in this fair region, the home of Apollo. Indeed, according to Hectius and Leto, the mother of Apollo, was born on an island in the Arctic Ocean, far beyond the north wind. See, I'm telling you, the narrative that we've been given as his story or history is in fact a made up narrative. And the truth is in the myths. The myths are the truth. Okay. Next page it reads, it is, okay, let me get into this. We're going to go pretty fast on this. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to read. It is not my intention to attempt a discussion of the theogony of the deities nor the cosmology of the world. My simple duty is to enlighten the world concerning a hereto unto unknown portion of the universe as it was seen and described by the Old Norseman Olaf Jensen. Interest in Northern research is international. 11 nations are engaged in or have contributed to the perilous work of trying to solve Earth's one remaining cosmology mystery. Now, you guys know, if you follow Chief Red Wolf, he talked about it, and I'm trying to do research on it when I can get to it. There is, when you look at movies like MGM Studios, Disney, Paramount, okay, you'll see when Paramount comes on, there's a round circle, and then there's a drawing of a black mountain or a mountain in the center. That is a nod to the so-called magnetic mountain in this Earth dome that no one has actually been able to reach. I think there's been maybe 1 or 2 expeditions of people that have attempted to reach that mountain. Okay. So when you see that logo that pops up in front of movies, when it tell a lie with your vision, that's a nod to the magnetic mountain. And that's a nod to where it is in the center of the Earth, which would be the poles, right? Okay. So just wanted to throw that out there. There is a saying, ancient as the hills, that truth is stranger than fiction. And in most startling manner has the axiom been brought home to me within the last fortnight. It was just 2 o'clock in the morning when I was aroused from my restful sleep by a vigorous ringing of my doorbell. The untimely disturber proved to be a messenger bearing a note, scrawled almost to the point of illegibility from an old Norseman by the name of Olaf Jensen. After much deciphering, I made out the writing, which simply said, am out unto death come. The call was imperative, and I lost no time in making ready to comply. Perhaps I may as well explain that Olaf Johnson is a man who quite recently celebrated his 95th birthday, has for the last half dozen years been living alone in an unpretentious bungalow out Glendale Way, a short distance from the business district of Los Angeles, California, which is my home state, my hometown. Santa Ana actually is. It was less than 2 years ago, while out walking one afternoon, that I was attracted by Olaf Johnson's house and its home-like surroundings toward its owner and occupant, whom I afterward came to know as a believer in the ancient worship of Odin and Thor. Odin and Thor is the same beings as Enki and Enlil. Okay, they're just renamed because of the time period and the people at the time. And, the same beings all around the world. They just changed their names, okay, because they lived a long time. So you have different cultures and different time periods that call them different names. So it says, there was a gentleness in his face and a kindly expression in the keenly alert gray eyes of this man who had lived more than 40 score years and 10, and with a sense of loneliness that appealed to my sympathy. Slightly stooped and with his hands clasped behind him, he walked back and forth with slow, measurable tread. That day when we first met, I can hardly say what particular motive impelled me to pause in my walk and engage him in conversation. He seemed pleased when I complimented him on the attractiveness of his bungalow and on the well-tended vines and flowers clustering his profusion over his windows, roof, and wide piazza. She had a beautiful entryway and beautiful flowers. I soon discovered that my new acquaintance was no ordinary person, but one profound and learned to a remarkable degree. A man who, in the later years of his long life, had dug deeply into books and become strong in the power of meditative silence. And here's a picture of him. Okay, them two. And you could see the flowers over the bungalow when they were walking in the street and so forth. So then it says, I encouraged him to talk and soon gathered that he had resided only 6 or 7 years in Southern California, but had passed a dozen years prior in one of the Middle Eastern states. Before that, he had been a fisherman off the coast of Norway. in the region of the Lofoten Islands, from whence he had made trips still further north to the Spitsbergen and even to the Franz Josef Land. When I started to make leave, he seemed reluctant to have me go and asked me to come again. Although at the time I thought nothing of it, I remember now that he made a peculiar remark as I extended my hand in the leave taking. "You will come again?" he asked. "Yes, you will come again someday. I am sure you will, and I shall show you my library and tell you many things of which have been never dreamed, things so wonderful that it may be you will not believe me." I laughingly assured him that I would not only come again, but would be ready to believe whatever he might choose to tell me of his travels and his adventures. In the days that followed, I became well acquainted with Olaf Jensen, and little by little, he told me his story. So marvelous that it's very daring challenges reasons and belief. The old Norseman also expressed himself with so much earnestness and sincerity that I became enthralled by his strange narrations. Then came the messenger's call that night, and within an hour I was at Olaf Johnson's bungalow. He was very impatient at the long wait, although after being summoned I had been immediately to his bedside. "I must hasten," he exclaimed, while yet he held my hand in greeting. "I have much to tell you that you know not, and I will trust no one but you. I fully realize," he went on hurriedly, "that I shall not survive the night. The time has come to join my fathers in the great sleep." I adjusted the pillows to make him more comfortable and assured him I was glad to be able to serve him in any way possible, for I was beginning to realize the seriousness of his condition, The lateness of the hour, the stillness of the surroundings, the uncanny feeling of being alone with this dying man, together with his weird story, all combined to make my heart beat fast and loud with a feeling for which I had no name. Indeed, there were many times that night by the old Norseman's couch, and there have been many times since when a sensation rather than conviction took possession of my very soul. And I seemed not only to believe in, but actually see the strange lands, the strange people, and the strange world of which he told, and to hear the mighty orchestral chorus of 1,000 lusty voices. For over 2 hours, he seemed endowed with almost superhuman strength, talking rapidly and to all appearances rationally. Finally, he gave me into hands certain data, drawings, and crude maps. "These," he said in conclusion, "I leave in your hands. If I can have your promise to give them to the world, I shall die happy, because I desire the people may know the truth, for then all mystery concerning the frozen Northland will be explained. There is no chance of your sufferings the fate I suffered." Okay. "They will not put you in irons, nor confine you in a madhouse, because you see, not telling your own story, but mine. And I think the gods, Odin and Thor, will be in my grave, and so beyond the reach of disbelievers who would persecute." And this is a picture of him in his deathbed. So this is Olaf Johnson here, and this is this gentleman, William. And he's listening to him. So I know that when you pass, right before you pass, you get a sudden burst of energy. And, I've been with people who have deceased, and they talk and they're very animated, and you think they're getting better and they're getting well. And the next thing you know, they exit the body. So it's like a big push of energy that lasts hurrah before they depart or transition. Okay, so he's explaining all this to him. So here's the next page. "Without a thought of the far-reaching results the promise entailed of foreseeing the many sleepless nights which the obligation has since been brought me, I gave my hand, and with it a pledge to discharge faithfully his dying wish. As the sun rose over the peaks of the San Jacinto far to the eastward, the spirit of Olaf Johnson, the navigator, the explorer, the worshiper of Odin and Thor, the man whose experiences and travels, as related, are without a parallel in the world's history, passed away, and I was left alone with the dead. And now, after having paid the last sad rites to the strange man from the Lofoten Islands and the still further northward Ho, the courageous explorer of frozen regions, who in his declining years, after he had passed the 80 mark, had sought an asylum of restful peace in the sun-favored California, I will undertake to make public his story. But first of all, let me indulge in one or two reflections. Generation followers generation. Generation follows generation. And the traditions from the misty past are handed down from sire to son. But for some strange reason, interest in the ice-locked unknown does not abate with the receding years, either in the minds of the ignorant or the tutored. With each new generation, a restless impulse stirs the hearts of men to capture the veiled citadel of the Arctic, the circle of silence, the land of glaciers, cold wastes of waters and winds that are strangely warm, increasingly interest and manifested in the mountainous icebergs, and marvelous speculations are indulged in concerning the Earth's center of gravity, the cradle of the tides, where the whales have their nurseries, where the magnetic needle goes mad, where the aurora borealis illumes the night, and where brave and courageous spirits of every generation dare to venture and explore to find the dangers of the farthest north. One of the ablest works of recent years is Paradise Found, or The Cradle of the Human Race of the North Pole by William F. Warren. And I am going to read those two books, okay? Paradise Found and The Cradle of the Human Race at the North Pole. In his carefully prepared volume, Mr. Warren almost stubbed his toe against the real truth, but missed it seemingly by only a hair's breadth if the Old Norseman revelation be true. Dr. Orville Livingston Leach, scientist in a recent article, says, the possibility of land inside the earth were first brought to my attention when I picked up a geode on the shores of the Great Lakes. The geode is spherical and apparently solid stone, but when broken it is found to be hollow and coated with crystals. The earth is only a large form of a geode, and the law that created the geode in its hollow form undoubtedly fashioned the earth in the same way. Okay. In presenting the theme of this almost incredible story as told by Olaf Jensen and supplemented by a manuscript, maps, crude drawings, and entrusted to me, a fitting introduction is found in the following quotation. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. And also God created man in his own image. Therefore, even in the things material, man must be godlike because is he the likeness of the Father. The kingdom of heaven lives within you. I'm adding that. Everybody knows that. Everybody should understand that and work towards reconnecting with the kingdom of heaven, which is inside you, instead of emulating it outwardly and praying outwardly, going into these worship buildings and centers and mosques and temples and praying outwardly with your fellow brother and sisters. It's great to build a community, but at the end of the day, you need to work on the relationship with yourself and with the creator of all. That's all I'm going to say. A man builds a house for himself and a family. The porches or verandas are all without and are secondary. The building is really constructed for the conveniences of within. Olaf Jensen makes the startling announcement through me, a humble instrument, that in like manner, God created the earth from within. That is said for its lands, seas, rivers, and mountains, forests, and valleys, and for its other internal conveniences, while the outside surface of the earth is merely the veranda, the porch, where things grow by comparison, but sparsely, like the lichen of the mountainside, clinging determinately for the bare existence. Okay. As I've said before, we are surface dwellers. We're on the surface of the so-called dome. There are beings that live underground and inside the earth. Even the U.S. military has bases that is inside the earth. Okay. But that's not up for debate. That's actual fact. Okay. So take an eggshell and from each end break out a piece as large as the end of the pencil. Extract its contents, and then you will have a perfect representation of Olaf Jensen's earth. The distance from inside the surface to the outside surface, according to him, is about 300 miles. The center of gravity is not the center of the earth, but in the center of the shell or crust. Therefore, if the thickness of the earth's crust or shell is 300 miles, the center of gravity is 150 miles below the surface. In their logbooks, Arctic explorers tell us of the dipping of the needle as the vessel sails in the regions of the furthest north known. In reality, they are at the curve on the edge of the shell where gravity is geometrically increased, while the electric current seemingly dashes off the space towards the phantom idea of the North Pole. Yet this same electric current drops again and continues its course southward along the inside surface of the crust. In the appendix to his work, Captain Sabine gives an account of experiments to determine the acceleration of the pendulum in different latitudes. This appears to have resulted from the joint labor of Perry and Sabine. He says, the accidental discovery that a pendulum, on being removed from Paris to the neighborhood of the equator, increased its time of vibration, give the first step to our present knowledge that the polar axis of the globe is less than equatorial, that the force of gravity at the center of the earth increases progressively from the equator towards the poles. According to Olaf Jensen, in the beginning, this old world of ours was created solely from within the world, where are located the four great rivers, the Euphrates, the Pison, and the Gihon, and the Hiddekel. These same names of rivers were applied to the streams of the outside surface of the earth and are purely traditional from antiquity beyond the memory of man. Okay. On the top of the high mountain near the fountainhead of these four rivers, Olaf Jensen, the Norseman, claims to have discovered the long lost Garden of Eden, the veritable navel of the earth, and to have spent over 2 years staying and recounting in this marvelous within land, exuberant with stupendous plant life and abounding in giant animals, a land where the people lived to be centuries old, after the order of Methuselah and other biblical characters, a region where 1/4 of the inner surface is water and 3/4 land, where there are large oceans and many rivers and lakes, where the cities are superlative in construction and magnificence, where modes of transportation are as far in advance of ours as we, with our boasted achievements, are in advance of the inhabitations of the darkest Africa. You hear what I said? Let me read that one more time. Pay attention. Pay attention. Where there are large oceans and many rivers and lakes, where the cities are superlative in construction and magnificence, where modes of transportation are as far in advance of ours as we, with our boasted achievements, are in advance of the inhabitants of the darkest Africa. The inhabitants of that cities insideward are the darkest of Africa. The distance, you understand what I'm saying? They were so-called, let me say it for this video, black or dark skin, melanated. I'm just going to say the inhabitants of the darkest Africa. They were black. They're my complexion, if not darker. And I don't like to use the word black. I'm going to say melanated, thoughtness. The distance directly across the space from the inner surface to inner surface is about 600 miles, less the recognized diameter of the earth. In the identical center of the vast vacuum is the seat of electricity, a mammoth ball of dull red fire, not startlingly bright, but surrounded by a white, mild, luminous cloud, giving out uniform warmth, and held in its place in the center of the eternal space by the immutable law of gravitation. This electrical cloud is known to be people within as the abode of the Smoky God. They believe it is the throne of the Most High. That cloud is known as a Smoky God, okay? That's what the people on the inside of the earth call it, all right? And they believe it is the throne of the Most High. Olaf Jensen reminded me of how, in the old college days, we all were familiar with the laboratory demonstrations of centrifugal motion, which clearly proved that if the earth was a solid, the rapidity of its revolution upon its axis would tear it into 1,000 fragments. The old Norsemen also maintained that from the furthest points of the land of the islands of the Spitsbergen and the Franz Josef land, flocks of geese may be seen annually flying still further northward, just as the sailors and explorers record in their logbooks. No scientist has yet been audacious enough to attempt to explain, even to his own satisfaction, toward what lands these winged flowers are guided by their subtle instinct. However, Olaf Jensen has given us the most reasonable explanation. The presence of the open sea in the Northland is also explained. Olaf Jensen claims that the northern aperture, intake, or hole, so to speak, is about 1,400 miles across. There's a hole in the earth. There's a hole in the earth in Antarctica. And I'm assuming that he's talking about Antarctica. Is he talking about the Arctic? Because there's two different locations, right? So I have seen depictions or pictures online of that giant, massive hole. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. So it says the hole is about 1,400 miles across. In connection with this, let us read what explorer Nansen writes on page 288 of his book. I have never had such a splendid sail on to the north, steadily north, with a good wind, as fast as steam and sail can take us, an open sea, mile after mile, watch after watch, through these unknown regions. Also, clearer and clearer of ice, one might almost say, how long will it last? The eye always turns to the northward as one paces the bridge. It is the gazing into the future. Excuse me. But there is always the same dark sky ahead, which means open sea. Again, the Norwood Review of England is in its issue of May 10th, 1884, says we do not admit that there is ice up in the pole. Once inside the great ice barrier, a new world breaks upon the explorer. The climate is mild like that of England, and afterward balmy as the Greek Isles. Some of the rivers within, Olaf Jensen claims, are larger than our Mississippi and Amazon rivers combined, in point of volume of water carried. Indeed, their greatness is occasioned by their width and depth rather than their length. And it is at the mouths of these mighty rivers as they flow northward and southward along the inside of the earth that mammoth icebergs are found, some of them 15 and 20 miles wide and from 40 to 100 miles in length. It is not strange that there has never been an iceberg encountered either in the Arctic or the Antarctic Ocean that is not composed of fresh water. Modern scientists claim that freezing eliminates the salt, but Olaf Jensen claims differently. Ancient Hindu, Japanese, and Chinese writings, and we know that they were called different names. This is the New World name for these countries, okay? Writings, as well as hieroglyphs of the extinct races of the North American continent, all speak of the custom of sun worshiping, and it is possible. Christianity is a form of sun worship, you guys. I don't care how you feel. You have to do your research. And he says, in the startling light of Olaf Jensen's revelations that the people of the inner world, lured away by the glimpses of the sun as is shown upon the inner surface of the earth, either from the northern or the southern opening, there's two, Arctic and Antarctic openings, became dissatisfied with the smoky god, the great pillar or mother cloud of electricity, and weary of their continuous mild and pleasant atmosphere, followed the brighter light and were finally led beyond the ice belt and scattered over the outer surface of the earth through Asia, Europe, North America, and later Africa, Australia, and South America. It is a notable fact that as if we approach the equator, the stature of the human race grows less. But the Patagonians of the South America are probably only aborigines from the center of the earth who came out through the aperture usually designated as the South Pole, and they are called the giant race. I have the book of the Patagonians in there. It's a very, very old book written in the 1800s. It's a very, very interesting read. It says, it says the following quotation is significant. It follows that the man issuing from a mother region still undetermined, but which a number of considerations indicate to have been in the north. His radiated in several directions that his migrations have been constantly from north to south. Okay, and this comes from the Popular Science Monthly, October 1883, page 753 by Marquise G. de Saportia. And it says, and this is the last part, Olaf Jensen averts that, Olaf Jensen averts that in the beginning, the world was created by the great architect of the universe so that man might dwell upon its inside surface, which has ever since been the habitation of the chosen. So we have a group, or our ancestors, who still live inside the earth today that are the chosen ones, okay? And it says, they who were driven out of the Garden of Eden brought through traditional history with them. The history of the people living within contains a narrative suggesting the story of Noah and the ark with which we are familiar. He sailed away, as did Columbus, from a certain port to a strange land he had heard of far to the northward, carrying with him all manner of beasts of fields and fowls of the air, but was never heard of afterward. On the northern boundaries of Alaska and still more frequently on the Siberian coast are found boneyards containing tusks of ivory in quantities so great as to suggest the burying places of antiquity. From Olaf Jensen's account, they have come from the great prolific animal life that abounds in the fields and forests and on the banks of numerous rivers of the inner world. The materials were caught in the ocean currents or were carried to ice floes and have accumulated like driftwood on the Siberian coast. This has been going on for ages, and hence these mysterious boneyards. On this subject, William F. Warren, in his book already cited pages 297 and 298, says, the Arctic rocks tell of a lost Atlantis more wonderful than Plato's. The fossil ivory beds of Siberia excel everything of every kind in the world. From the days of Pliny, at least, they have constantly been undergoing exploration and still they are the chief headquarters of supply. The remains of the mammoths are so abundant as to Grappa says the northern islands of Siberia seem built up of crowded bones. Another scientific writer, speaking of the islands of New Siberia northward of the mouth of the river Lena, uses this language: large quantities of ivory and dug out and ground every year. Indeed, some of the islands are believed to be nothing but an accumulation of drifter timber of the bodies of the mammoths and other antediluvian animals frozen together. From this, we may infer that during the years that have elapsed since the Russian conquest of Siberia, useful tusks from more than 20,000 mammoths have been collected. But now for the story of Olaf Jensen. I give it in detail as set down by himself in manuscript and woven into the tale, just as he placed there uncertain quotations from recent works on Antarctic exploration, showing how carefully the old Norseman compared with his own experiences those of other voyages to the frozen north. Thus he writes, the disciple of Odin and Thor. And I've read to you the introduction, part 1 and part 2, and I'm going to stop at I read to you introduction and part 1, and then the next part when I come back, because this is a really short read, will be part 2. Okay, and then that'll be it, because this book only comes in like maybe 5 parts. That's it. 6 parts in conclusion. So this is a very, very short read. So I wanted to jump on here and just read to you at lunchtime. For me, it has been it's been a journey to learn as much as I have learned and to kind of layer in and put the puzzle pieces together. Many people have been brought to me thanks to the creator of all, the Great Spirit, Kimiro, Chief Red Wolf, Drop 432, Woodward, Navi Poet, Original Lone Wolf. I'm missing a lot of people. Millennials Best. I mean, there's a handful of people. Dark Waters that I, interact with. When I say interact with, I do when I jump on their lives and their channels. I speak to them, and I may message them out of just being on social media. My thing is that for me, the creator of all will bring people into your life when it's a purpose and when it's a point in time when you're ready to ascend or ready to learn. Let me put it that way. Ascension is a choice, and ascension is a journey, and it doesn't happen overnight. But I am on my journey, and I am thankful that you all are here to listen to me read, bring up some interesting topics, and hopefully you learn something. So there's been multiple people that have taken this journey to the Antarctica and the Arctic. Okay. To the outer world, where there are beings that live inside the world, as well as the U.S. military knows that, and there are negative entities that are inside the earth as well. I'm here to tell you that this world is not what you think it is. And, I know some people may have a hard time grasping what I'm saying. My point is that You have a choice of whether you want to stay in ignorance and live your life the way you've been living it, or you want to improve upon your life and grow as much as possible. For me, this is my journey, and I'm sharing it with you. And I am asking for the knowledge, and it's being brought to me. Now, yes, it's in someone else's format and their text, and I'm reading from a book, and everything can be doctored or manipulated. But this is where you go in prayer and you use your discernment with the Great Spirit, right? So anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to me. I'm at 30 minutes, and that's where I want to stop at. So this is the book, The Smoky God, The Voyage to the Inner World. And I will be back to be doing more readings over the reptilians, Murder of Reality, as well as Tess and the Cabbage Patch Kids, Flying Serpents and Dragons, and the Holy Sciences, which will aid in your ascension. So I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you again for joining me. And remember what I always say, be the change you want to see all around this earth dome, because it's up to you and I to make a positive change. Happy Monday to you all. You guys have a magnificent day.